KMC HD3 Detroit, KMPS HD3 Seattle, WBMX HD3 Boston.
And on AOL Radio
and Yahoo Launchcast. Psychic Radio is now CBS Radio's The Sky.
Back to Behind the Paranormal
with Paul and Ben Eno. Call now 248-545-SOUL.
New skyradio.com. Believe.
Are all spirits deceptive? What are the true origins of our most common beliefs? What happened to Ben and me when we visited Rendlesham Forest in England about, a little over a week ago?
Well, absolutely nothing. And welcome to the 384th edition of Behind the Paranormal with Paul and Ben Eno. And we're home from our adventures in Iceland and England, and we're glad to be back with you live once again, considering it's been like...
3 weeks?
About 3 weeks of pre-recorded shows on here.
Well, yeah.
Well, whatever, replays. So with all the emails that have piled up while we were gone, and those that have already been piled up for over the last 2 weeks and longer, we decided to do an open line show tonight. So let's get started. So please feel free to call in this evening, 248-545-7685. Again, 248-545-7685.
Well, a major area... Well, first of all, let me apologize for our voices. As soon as we get off the plane, we get hit by our allergies again, and we'll be croaking our way through the next few shows, I guess. But a major area of our correspondence interest over the past 2 weeks has been, did anything interesting happen to us when we visited Rendlesham Forest? That, of course, is the place in eastern England where the famous UFO sightings and landings of 1980 took place, and a number of other interesting things have occurred over the centuries. And we, of course, did over 30 hours of on-air time with the major witnesses, and we really have we don't know anything to that case.
Okay, so we arrived in the village of Woodbridge in Suffolk on Friday, September 21st, and we hooked up with Gordy Goodger and Larry Warren, who organized our speaking program there. And UFO witness Larry Warren was there with us, as I mentioned, a frequent guest on this show.
And thanks to both of them. We had a marvelous time. We met some wonderful folks over there who were listeners of the show, and we had a standing room only audience. We can brag about that, but it was kind of a small room, so I guess that's nothing.
Yeah, well, close.
Anyway, events. I don't know. All right. Well, the events of the evening were interesting on Friday. We arrived. We were sort of hanging out with our some relatives in other parts of England, and then drove from London to Suffolk. If I never see another roundabout, it'll be too soon.
Oh God!
Excuse me. And we arrived on Friday evening, and went out to Rendlesham Forest. It was, of course, our first visit, but Larry Warren, one of the witnesses, of course, was with us. Also, Brenda Butler, Beverly Plumridge, Gordy was there, and a few other people we were, who were listeners of the show and certainly are now good friends of ours. I don't know if you're usually pretty reticent. You don't want to talk about what happened Friday.
Nope.
Okay. All right. Well, just keep them guessing. Okay. Well, suffice it to say, Ben did not.
It's nothing against you people or listeners or whatever. It's nothing against you. It's the fact that I hate talking about it.
Yeah. Okay. Well,
you can
anyway.
talk about it if you want, because I need to go get up anyway.
Okay. All right,
Okay,
deal.
I will be right back.
All right. So anyway, suffice to say, Ben did not return on Saturday to the forest when we visited it by day. The nighttime visit was extremely interesting. A number of people do go out there at night and see all sorts of things. Of course, it's easy to see things if you are suggestible or open to it. But there are photographs, especially by Brenda Butler, who is a local author in that area, who has written about this case, that are really, really remarkable. Obviously, no time to test them, but from my experience, for what it's worth, they were quite remarkable photos. A number of things, and our entire contention, and one of the reasons for us going there is our contention that in investigating flap areas where seemingly unrelated paranormal phenomena are going on a long-term basis, that this is probably one of the most major areas we visited. Ben, being of shamanic training and a shamanic bent under the guidance of a very adept and a very spiritual man who was a Mexican, full-blooded Aztec shaman who has been training him over the last few years. Ben was overwhelmed by the energies in this area. I myself became dizzy, and this is a common thing apparently there. Ben collapsed to the ground and was. People say, "What kind of father are you for permitting this?" Well, first of all, he's almost 21, and secondly, it was. I'm used to this. I know the procedures here, and I know when to touch him and when not to touch him, and it's. I have every confidence in his abilities. It is. It seems as when he goes into an area like this, and as I say, this was certainly one of the most powerful I've ever encountered in 42 years of researching this stuff. Any entity that is there that is in the multiverse vortices that are going on and the worlds that are coming and going and that are aware of him seem to want to talk to him. And there were a number of presences which were not negative who attempted to protect us from those that were. It is probably comparable or almost worse than the case we always talk about in Connecticut, which is the sort of Grand Central Station, as we say, of the paranormal, and all sorts of interesting creatures. Life forms are coming and going, things that might be interpreted as ghosts under the normal circumstances, and UFOs, even government activity or the activity of someone with military forces at their disposal is going on in that area. Same thing with Rendlesham. This case, which occurred, the center of it being, the best known part of it being in 1980 in December, when military forces on both sides of the forest, there were 2 NATO air bases there, were drawn into the forest but because of security concerns, because of craft that were seen landing, and it was very. For those of you who are familiar with it, you may be familiar with the Halt tape. Colonel Halt was Lieutenant Colonel Halt was the deputy base commander of this area, and he went into the forest with some people, including Monroe Nevels, who was on the show with us recently, and we actually played the tape that he made that night in the place where he made it. It was really quite an experience on the following Saturday. And also, Larry Warren took us out to show where the landing site was. It's in the middle of somebody's carrot field next to the forest, and for many years the area was discolored all the way up till 1990 and beyond. And Larry was saying how truckloads of earth had to be brought in to fill in this area so that the poor farmer could grow his carrots again. So now it's a carrot field, and Larry said one of these days someone's going to come after him with a shotgun for taking people out there. But it was really a wonderful experience, and we thank Larry and Gordy and everyone at Ronnie Dugdale and all our good friends there for showing us such a warm welcome and such a very interesting tour of these areas. So essentially, nothing really happened to me, but Ben had his adventures. So it was great. All right, let's move on then to our emails. And let's begin here with one from Megan in San Jose, California.
I should have had a sip of tea for good luck. All right. Hi, Paul and Ben. We have a psychic that has been working with our group for several years. She often identifies demons that are dominating or holding captive humans who have passed on, not letting them cross over. How would you both deal with a case like this without a seance? Oh, God.
Well, exactly.
Do you want to get this one, or should I?
Well, why don't we both? I mean, there are things in here that we can address.
Yeah.
Because I think the whole approach is wrong. Go ahead.
No, you started. You said.
All right.
You fired the first shot.
Okay. Anyway, John Paul Jones. Okay.
Yes.
All right. A psychic has been working with the group. Now, presumably the group is, I suppose, a paranormal investigation group or a ghost hunting group. Something we do not encourage unless you really, really know what you're doing, and almost no one does. So psychics working with groups are more common than they used to be. Ghost hunters of days of yore did not like psychics, didn't think they were scientific enough, and that has apparently changed. So here's the psychic working with the group. There are psychics and there are psychics. I have no idea who this is, but identifying demons that are dominating or holding captive humans who have passed on. Okay, as longtime listeners know, we don't approach it that way. Demons we consider folklore. However, what the folklore is based on are life forms that we refer to as parasites. We've done whole shows on these. These are life forms that apparently feed, among other things, on, for lack of a better term, negative human emotions, simply because that's where they appear, and that's where they seem to operate. Holding captive humans who have passed on. Well, first of all, we don't believe humans do pass on, really. We believe they're already there in parallel lives. And there are no such things as ghosts in the classical sense of spirits of the dead. We think it's the actual people in parallel worlds where they never died. And I think what the psychic may be very legitimate, what he or she may be interpreting is picking up the presence of these people. There are plenty of situations in normal human life which are very unfortunate, where others are almost parasitical and dominate other people. We've all seen that. I think this can be interpreted as parasites dominating human ghosts. On the other hand, there are parasites that actually do dominate other parasites in their operations. We have gone through the various species of parasites on other shows. You can look back at the podcast. I think whoever the psychic is may be perfectly legitimate as far as abilities are concerned, but then is interpreting these things in terms of 19th century spiritualism, which doesn't know anything about parasites in that sense, and doesn't know anything about the multiverse, and thinks, understandably so, that these are spirits of the dead, because what else could they be? Well, there are plenty of other things they could be. And then finally, Megan here mentions not letting them cross over. Okay. Cross over to what? Again, this is the 19th century spiritualist approach.
Then it's the other side. Then it's like, what is the other side?
Yeah, exactly. Which other side?
Yeah,
there are billions of other sides, other universes.
Indeed.
And then many times we talk about the light. They say, "Oh, send to the light." We've gotten photographs of the light, and to us, it appears to be the boundaries, electromagnetic boundaries between parallel worlds. You might be sending them into a world that might be a hell. And you don't hear from them again, so I send them to the light. Good Lord. I mean, don't do it. So, Ben, what's your comment here?
Oh, well, you...
Well, we better comment on the last thing. Without a seance, never do seance.
Oh, that's where we were.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, no, we don't do that. And we've never had to do that, and I hope we never will do that.
Well, we won't. No, I mean...
Because our approach doesn't call for that.
Well, exactly. These bulldozer tactics that led in all kinds of things. It's not a good idea. Your whole approach is wrong, and I'll finish commenting on that after the break, but we do have to take our first break. It is Behind the Paranormal with Paul and Ben Eno on CBS New Sky Radio and newskyradio.com. We will be right back to continue with our emails, and you're welcome to call in, too, on our open line show. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
Thursday is a power-packed day here on the Sky. Join us at noon for the I'm Thankful Network. At 1 p.m., it's the Dr. Pat Show. At 4 p.m., Colette Baron-Reed takes the stage for the Colette Baron-Reed Show. The Colette Baron-Reed Show, where intuition, practical spirituality, great advice, a little woo-woo fun, and fabulosity meet. Colette Baron-Reed is an internationally renowned intuitive counselor, educator, and best-selling author who helps others recognize and connect with their own intuition, potential, and purpose. Powerful motivational speaker, charismatic broadcast personality, and acclaimed performer, storyteller, and recording artist, Colette uses her extraordinary spiritual gifts to empower her clients to live a life that is awake and authentic, and to create a reality that is spiritual, deliberate, and meaningful. Call in early. The lines are hot. 248-545-7685. Instant feedback at newskyradio.com. New Sky Radio. newskyradio.com. New horizons, no boundaries. Powered by CBS, Yahoo, and radio.com.
Psychic Radio is now CBS Radio's The Sky.
Back to Behind the Paranormal
With Paul and Ben Eno. Call now 248-545-SOUL. New skyradio.com.
And welcome back. And just a final comment on that last email regarding seances. Seances are a trap. They're a bulldozer technique. You don't know what's going to come through. Everybody believes what they're told, and you can't really believe what you're told. It's not impossible that you are dealing with what it says it is, but it's too dangerous. As we always say, you can stand in the middle of the highway. Maybe you'll get hit, maybe you won't. It's not worth the risk. And it really gets you nowhere. It is a trap. So that's our 2 cents. Now, moving on to the next one. This is about the nature of time from Scott Mudry in Randleman, North Carolina. And I'd kind of this is rather heavy going. I'd take it kind of extra slow.
Scott J. Mudry.
Sorry.
You missed the middle name.
Okay.
I have read and understood the information presented on your site. You have performed an incredible amount of analysis. Please allow me to make one important suggestion, since I hadn't seen it mentioned. When you discuss any concept that involves the nature of time, or the multiverse, you must take into consideration 2 things. Time is a function of thermodynamics. Specifically, when electrons cease to orbit nuclei, absolute zero existence ceases to exist. Oh, crap, where was I? Oh, yeah. But we are simultaneously analyzing data through the lens of from a self-aware system, specifically in order to make sense of our temporal experiences, which exist within the framework of the larger infinite. We need to be able to sequence events. It's very easy to allow these concepts to overlap. I hope this aids in your work.
Okay, well, thank you, Scott, very much. That's very incisive. I would point out a few things. Okay, this is very sensible, very Heisenberg. However, I don't know if if I'm reading this correctly, I don't know if you're considering the contention of many quantum physicists who believe in the multiverse that the laws of physics are very different, or can be very different, from world to world. And the thing that gets wacky is that in our experience, we're talking about worlds blending. So do the laws of physics, which is why I think I stood in that house in 1974 in Bridgeport, Connecticut, with a couple of police officers and firefighters and watched a refrigerator float off the floor. That couldn't happen in our, strictly speaking, our universe, our time-space stream with its laws of physics. But since worlds were blending, laws of physics changed. That's how I look at it anyway. Time being a function of thermodynamics, I'm not a physicist, not a scientist. I approach quantum physics from one who has experienced it in the paranormal trenches, okay? So I guess my background is in philosophy and theology. But anyway, if I'm reading you correctly, again, that is a matter for some debate, particularly in view of what I just said about the laws of physics applying to various worlds in different ways, or different laws of physics. You mentioned through the lens of a self-aware system. Yes, of course, that's very safe, specifically in order to make sense of our temporal experiences. Well, again, Einstein, of course, also described it as a function of our consciousness. Maybe this is how it's a function of our consciousness here, but time existing in a state of coexistence, all time existing coexistent with all other time, is also a principle generally of quantum mechanics. So I would say maybe you're right, but maybe you're not broad enough in your approach to this. So that's what I would say. But I would consider the idea that the laws of physics really don't mean an awful lot out in the greater multiverse. So take that for what it's worth. But thank you very much for a very incisive note on this subject. We're very glad to have people of your caliber listening to this show.
Indeed.
Okay, here is one about EMF meters. EMF means electromagnetic field meters, which is a very sort of popular tool among engineers and ghost hunters. So this is from Bonnie in Denver, Colorado.
Alright, so Bonnie writes to us. Hi, Paul and Ben. I always look forward to your shows and really appreciate your insights into life. From your August 26th show, of what year, I wanted to ask what your guest thinks of how you yourselves use EMF meters. I heard you explain it several times, the reverse polarity of fields, meaning an exchange of energy between parallel worlds and all that.
Oh, okay. We had Katharina Sperling Caffel on the show that day, and this question was meant for her, but it was all we're reading it now because it was also addressed to us. We didn't have any time to read any emails on that show. And Katharina is an expert in electromagnetic fields, and the approach that we were taking on the show was how dangerous can these be? Can they affect human behavior? Can they affect human health? And that was the approach on that show. So, okay, how thinks of how we ourselves use the EMF meters. We use them differently than most people do. We use them sparingly. I often tell the story of how I came to use EMF meters. It was in the early 90s, and I don't know if there were any groups doing that at the time, but I was it was suggested to me. I shouldn't say it was in the early 80s, as a matter of fact. And I was the editor of a small newspaper here in Rhode Island, and an engineer friend knew what I was doing. And, of course, I didn't. You don't generally, blurt out that you're the local ghost investigator if you're the editor of the local paper. But this engineer knew and said, why don't you try, because I was explaining in terms of electromagnetic fields and some suspicions I was already having about the multiverse and this business. And she said, why don't you take an electromagnetic field meter, which at the time just had a needle. There weren't any digital ones that I knew of at that time. And said, just, see what happens. So I took it into a house in Uxbridge, Massachusetts, where there was a rather serious situation going on. There were some parasites involved, and there had been. It's the interesting case that I've talked about on the show before, where I believe I prevented a suicide from occurring in another part of the multiverse, and probably in the future in our time stream, so that all seemed to be well at the end of the case. But there was an entity coming down the hallway toward me. I could kind of feel it personally, and that needle on that meter dropped to zero. It was as if the thing died. And I said, what on earth is this all about? So later on, a number of years later, when I got a digital EMF meter, and this is one of the few electronic gadgets we use, we found that it will go into the negative range. That's what the needle didn't go into the negative range. It just went down to zero and positive and stopped. But the digital meter went into the negative range, which means the polarity on the electrical field was reversed. And from circumstantial evidence, time and time again, it seems that when that occurs, energy is flowing between worlds. So parasites are coming and going, which they seem to be able to do, or time and space are being affected and strange things are happening. That seems to be how we use that. Frankly, our guest at the time did not seem to be too familiar with that phenomenon. I suppose not. I've spoken with one or two people who are scientists, I suppose, and they were a little fuzzy on what it means when it goes into the negative range. Sometimes polarity is reversed, but in the circumstances in which I was describing it, they really couldn't explain how it was happening. With no source to provide the electrical current that the field surrounds. But anyway, so I guess there really wasn't much of an answer from our guest on that. But that is how we generally use EMF meters. Ben, do you have any comments on that?
You're the one who usually deals with the EMF meter. I don't really need it.
No, he's an EMF meter with two legs. So anyway, and the note says the reverse polarity in the field, meaning an exchange of energy between parallel worlds and all that. Okay, so I really didn't get much of an answer from Canterbury because she and many experts really are not all that familiar with that. But maybe we all kind of learned something on that show.
Yeah, you learn a little bit of everything.
Absolutely, that's one of the great things about doing this show. We meet wonderful people, we have wonderful listeners, and we learn a lot. All right, here's a question. This is from Shannon in Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada, and I guess it's about cryptoids or cryptids.
Cryptoids? Superman?
Oh, yeah, that's right. Planet, whatever.
Anyway, I I find myself pondering the many reported sightings of such beings as Sasquatch, Jersey Devil, and Chupacabra, etc. Assuming the not entire reporting public is involved in a hoax or has an overactive imagination, there must be something to these sightings, but what are they? I have considered the following theories. 1, your multiverse theory that they are from another dimension and have overlapped with ours. 2, some or all of these creatures are physical and are undiscovered species. 3, folklore and focused energy have created these beings, i.e. the Jewish golem. In regards to the Sasquatch, I have heard local hunters and woodsmen say that they have seen them, smelt them, and found hairs, which lead me to believe that these creatures to be may be physical. But why we have as of yet never found any physical evidence, bones, a carcass, living creature. I would like to hear more of your experiences and how you feel your theories may explain these creatures.
All right, that's a really good question. There are a couple of points here, Ben, that I would focus on here. The notion that folklore and focused energy can actually create these things. You know, you run into that with the tulpa thing.
Or voodoo.
Yeah, voodoo, yeah. And that's a good question, whether at least some of these cryptids could be literally projected onto the fabric of our space-time by people's minds. Remember, we were talking about the cases in which paranormal investigators are in houses and they assume they're dealing with spirits of the dead that somehow are all powerful. They can control the environment and everything else, which I think is mostly nonsense. But they're moving between worlds, so they appear to be able to manipulate space and time. But they'll say, "Oh, can you change the temperature on this thermometer, or can you move that book, or can you do this?" And it'll happen. And the question arises: is some entity doing it? Are the, as we often say, the circumstances that allow the entity to manifest, the energies, are they doing it? Or are the investigators doing it?
Yeah.
Somehow. And there is a serious question about that. So in the same way, perhaps these things can be manifested by people. Or you're walking through the woods and your brain is tuned like a radio to the right frequency, if you want to use that word, and you can pick up the worlds in which these creatures exist.
Yep.
Now, I'm not so sure I accept the contention that no bodies have ever been found, that no true physical evidence has ever been pinned down and studied. There have been, I mean, if the UFO phenomenon is any indication, then whoever is hushing that up
is probably hushing that up.
Yeah. I mean, you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I've thought that too.
Yeah. And maybe there are bodies. Maybe there are maybe there's plenty of physical evidence. And speaking of physical evidence and the physical reality of these things, if they are, the multiverse does not mean that they're not physically real. As a matter of fact, the physicality of most worlds we've encountered is quite striking, which is why I don't believe that ghosts are spirits. I'm not saying there are no spirits. There are certainly worlds, and there must be because we can conceive of them, in which these entities are of a different kind of material or something we don't even recognize as something we would have in our world. And there you have it. So all these are possible, Shannon, when it comes to these things. Now, one of the things we heard at Rendlesham Forest, and this is the night you were there too, was people talking about the presence of cryptids, particularly Bigfoot. There have supposedly been chupacabra sightings, which is the first time I've heard of that in Europe. And you name it, and it's there, much as would be the case in any sort of junction of many worlds, all blending and interacting in the places of the energy that Rendlesham has. So, did you get any sense of the presence of any cryptids?
I don't even know what I sensed.
Yeah, well, you tend not to remember when these things happen.
I really don't remember much, to be completely honest.
Yeah, okay. So I did record the whole. We found that our video cameras. Oh, we need a break. I'm sorry. I've been rattling on. It's Behind the Paranormal with Paul and Ben Eno, and we'll be right back. Stay with us.
Thursday is a power-packed day here on the Sky. Join us at noon for the I'm Thankful Network. At 1 p.m., it's the Dr. Pat Show. At 4 p.m., Colette Baron Reed takes the stage for the Colette Baron Reed Show. The Colette Baron Reed Show, where intuition, practical spirituality, great advice, a little woo-woo fun, and fabulosity meet. Colette Baron Reed is an internationally renowned intuitive counselor, educator, and best-selling author who helps others recognize and connect with their own intuition, potential, and purpose. Powerful motivational speaker, charismatic broadcast personality, and acclaimed performer, storyteller, and recording artist, Colette uses her extraordinary spiritual gifts to empower her clients to live a life that is awake and authentic, and to create a reality that is spiritual, deliberate, and meaningful. Call in early. The lines are hot. 248-545-7685. Instant feedback at newskyradio.com. New Sky Radio. newskyradio.com. New horizons, no boundaries. Powered by CBS, Yahoo, and radio.com.
Is now CBS Radio's The Sky.
Back to Behind the Paranormal
with Paul and Ben Eno.
Call now
248-545-SOUL.
New skyradio.com. Believe.
And we're back, and we're just dealing with a email, very interesting email from Shannon in Vancouver, BC. And Shannon has been asking about the nature of cryptids, nature of Sasquatch and these sorts of creatures, Jersey Devil, etc., lake monsters and all that business that are seen, but what is the explanation for the multiverse, physical and undiscovered species. That's, of course, always possible.
But
or
then
just focused energy.
if it comes from a multiverse thing, how does that make them not physical?
Oh, no, it doesn't. Yeah, I think they're perfectly physical. So I've had, maybe more than Ben, have had experiences during, there's a particular place on our property where I'll go, and sometimes we'll see these. In our old house, which was much more woodsy than this one is, I once came out of we had a little lodge I had for meditation purposes, and I came out, and there was one of the, as I refer to them, the lion people standing there, and I could hear it walking, and or him or she or whatever, walking in the leaves of the forest floor, and just disappeared. And this is something that I thought, well, it's got to be multiversal. They're coming and going. Some species are better at that than we are. One thing I need to point out here, though, Shannon, the multiverse idea is one of many worlds. Many worlds in this sense and dimensions are not necessarily the same thing. Well, they aren't the same thing. They are used interchangeably, even by us sometimes when talking about these things. But within worlds, there may be many dimensions. String theory, which I think is a little bit stretched, pardon the pun, is sort of a way to reconcile old physics with new physics, Newtonian physics with quantum physics. And in so doing, it is postulated that there are perhaps 10 or 11 different dimensions. But that's within our world, okay, as I understand it. So there are a lot of little innuendos and things here that may affect the answer to this question. But I think you're essentially, in your three approaches to what a cryptid might be right on all counts. Certainly some are undiscovered species, I'm sure. Others are multiversal. Others may be focused energy. We actually sort of create these things. So very good points. Thank you for writing in about that. Here is one from Paris, a person named in Malta, okay, in the Mediterranean Sea. That's an interesting place.
Oh, almost hit that over.
I'd kind of take that a little slowly.
All right. So, hi, my name is Paris, and I've been studying the paranormal alongside the Bible for 26 years. I clean up the mess that ghost hunters leave behind, and the damage that Ouija boards make in people's lives. All spirits are demons. They have been around from the beginning of time, trying to delude people into thinking they are someone's long-dead relative. Spirits know all things about you and your family. That's why they can't answer, or they can answer all questions put to them.
Okay, why don't we break this up? Okay. Paris, I see your point here. And Ben, please comment on this as well.
Okay.
All spirits are demons. Well, I don't think all, if you want to use the term demons in place of Paris, I don't think all demons are spirits. I think spirits are rather few and far between. Spirits in the sense of creatures without bodies, without physical bodies. I think that most of our worlds we're talking about are rather physical. Now, I see what you're getting at here. I think you are obviously your point of view is tempered by your religious beliefs. That's fine. You could be right, but I think that all this is kind of bigger than that. I think in order to, well, if you can use the Bible as a book of interpreting the paranormal, which I don't think that's what it's for, you might come to the same conclusions or even different conclusions. That's why there are 20,000 or more. That's no exaggeration. Different groups that claim to be Christian based on the Bible, because nobody can agree on what it all means. So I think, obviously you're entitled to your opinion, but I wouldn't necessarily agree here, even that the whole spirit thing is correct. I do not think that all paranormal manifestations are demonic. They are not all intended to mislead us. Plenty are, but not, I don't think, for theological reasons. I think because these life forms need to eat. I mean, I don't like mosquitoes, but I understand why they will land and suck our blood, because that's how they eat. It's the same thing. They will use, matter of fact, I think parasites have used religion.
I think you should let me finish the email before you keep going.
Sorry. Go ahead.
All right. He goes on to say, the Bible clearly tells us that if you study it, I have known ex-Satanists and ex-Illuminati members and Freemasons who have all confirmed this many times. Demons/spirits are all out to deceive us and lead us away from God. The questions you can not answer on Coast to Coast, I can. There are no friendly spirits, Paul. It is a deception. And I can, and I will prove this to you. Is that Epiphany chapter? I can't tell. What book of the Bible is that he's talking about? It's the third to last line.
Ephesians 6:12. All right. Yeah. All right.
Ephesians 6:12. Yeah. For a start, if we only pick up one leaf from a tree, do we have a tree in our hands, or do we need the branches to before we have a whole tree? You have my email if you would like to talk about what I know. God bless you and yours, Paul Paris.
Well, thank you, Paris. When I have time, I'd like to talk to you more, perhaps by email here, certainly. But I would like to comment that, see, you put things in terms that I think aren't big enough. If we pick up one leaf from a tree, do we have a tree in our hands? Yes, we do. All of it. All trees. That's the nature of the multiverse. I don't know if I want to get into explaining that here, but I just think you're. Yeah. Well, let me just approach it this way. There are those in the most ancient churches. I have no idea what your denomination is. You're using the Bible, as do a lot of other people, in a way that I don't think it was intended to be used. Yes, all parasites are not our friends. Parasites mean us, maybe not harm, but they don't mean us any good. And I don't know if they deliberately mean to hurt us when they feed from us, because, you don't hurt your food source, although, of course, we do slaughter and turn cows into hamburgers, so who knows? I think plenty of them do mean to hurt us, now that I think of it, now that I look back on my own experience with it. So, but I mean, I have never found that their theology is the same as ours. They can be, if you yourself use it as a tool and really believe, they can be terrified by the name of Jesus. But they can also be terrified by the name of ISIS or some avatar or Buddha or whatever whom you find to be powerful. They can be battled successfully and terrified of your own ancestors. It all depends on what power you can call upon. It is not to denigrate any of these that I say this. It is to point out my experience for what it's worth, which stretches over 42 years anyway. So I just don't know. There are those in the most ancient churches who would say that you, unless you are part of the tradition, I know that's a dirty word for some, modern evangelicals, but it's a legitimate word from the early church, tradition with a capital T, of which the Bible is considered a part by them, that you have no right to use the Bible if you are not part of that tradition, because you won't understand it. And the fact that there are 20,000 different and this is my seminary training talking here, take it for what it's worth, that there are 20,000 or plus groups that can't agree with each other and don't read the Bible in the same way and all this. And I would ask what language you are reading the Bible in. Are you reading it in Greek? Even if you are, we don't know the original words, because we don't know which are the oldest manuscripts. And even then, some of them were changed. So, I mean, it's one hopes, as I often say, that the Spirit of God preserves the point of these things. But to just use that as the be-all and end-all for paranormal research, I don't think is quite good enough, because that's not what it's meant for. It warns us, particularly in 1 John, do not trust every spirit. In Greek, it says, do not believe every spirit. And that's very good advice. We take that advice to heart all the time. Don't believe, don't trust these critters until you are sure that they are what they say they are. And that can be very tricky. So it's best to kind of be very cautious about the whole thing. So, yeah, I agree with you here, but I see your point, but let's get in touch and try to see where we are here with this. All right, here is another. Oh, okay, already read that one. Okay, here's one from. How are we doing that?
We're going to be breaking.
Oh, we got to break again. I'm sorry, I did it again. Be right back behind the paranormal. Stay with us.
Mondays are motivational. It all begins with you. And that's where the movement within featuring life coach April Claxton comes in. Join April and her uplifting guests Monday at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. Featured on Animal Planet, Court TV, Unsolved Mysteries, and The Hauntings, psychic Barbara Mackey. Barbara is a 6th-generation psychic medium, animal psychic, and spirit communicator. Tune into Visions with Barbara Mackey at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. There are 4 corners, and Will and Nancy will take you there at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. Existence is what we live for. Adventure is our journey. Metaphysical topics, inspiring and educational guest speakers, psychic readings, and more. Artie's the Party with Angels and Answers, Mondays at 9 p.m. Eastern Time. Psychic readings and more. Join the fun. What goes bump in the night? Heidi knows. At 11 p.m. Eastern Time, Heidi Hollis's The Outlander will lunge into topics on all things outlandish and more. Call in or write Heidi to vent or get advice about your paranormally inspired curiosities or challenges. Call in early. The lines are hot. 248-545-7685. Instant feedback at newskyradio.com. New Sky Radio. newskyradio.com. New horizons, no boundaries. Powered by CBS, Yahoo, and radio.com.
I'm getting weary. How far is heaven? I know that I need to change my ways of living. How far is heaven? Oh, can you tell me? I've been locked up way too long in this crazy world. How far is heaven? I just keep on praying, Lord, and just keep on living. How far is heaven? Yeah, Lord, can you tell me? How far is heaven? I just gotta know how far you. How far is heaven? Yeah, Lord, can you tell me? Échame tu bendición, 'cause I know there's a better place than this place I'm living. How far is heaven? So I just got to show some faith and just keep on giving. How far is heaven? Yeah, Lord, can you tell me? How far is heaven? I just gotta know how far, yeah. How far is heaven? Yeah, Lord, can you tell me? How far is heaven? I just gotta know how far.
Psychic Radio is now CBS Radio's The Sky.
Back to Behind the Paranormal
With Paul and Ben Eno. Call now 248-545-SOUL. NewSkyRadio.com.
Oh, welcome back. We thought we'd probably finish up this evening. Going back to the subject of Rendlesham and various things that we uncovered there. The area, as we suggested, is a flap area, that the 1980 UFO sightings were the tip of an iceberg, and a very big iceberg that reaches back apparently even prior to Roman times. Ben, there on Friday night, the 21st, was clearly picked up the sense of a druid presence in these woods, which was very common. In that time, they would hide from the Romans, and Romans didn't like them. And then other examples of things that have happened within almost sight of this area are the green children of Woolpit in the 12th century. A boy and a girl with green skin literally appeared in the village of Woolpit, saying they'd come out of a cave. The cave was well known. And that they lived in an underground world. This is after they learned to speak English, which took quite a while. And this was about 20 miles from the Rendlesham area. And also in 1642, there was I hope I'm pronouncing this, remind me, Ben, because they told us how to pronounce this. I said Aldeburgh, but they said Aldbur or something of that. Something like that, yeah. There was a sky battle seen by numerous people in 1642 when apparently craft of some kind in the sky were fighting with each other. And then, of course, one thinks this area was very active during World War II. It's in eastern England. A lot of the air bases, the very ones that are next to Rendlesham Forest, were built during World War II when the Battle of Britain was occurring and the Germans were attacking Britain and strafing things and bombing a lot of areas outside of London. And one wonders if in 1642 worlds didn't sort of blend, and they saw into what for them would be the future, which was perhaps an air battle of World War II, or something entirely different. But they saw something in the sky in 1642, 13 miles, from Rendlesham Forest. In 1988, there were reports of a disappearing cyclist. Fellow would be riding a bicycle around and just disappear in front of people, 40 miles away from Rendlesham. There were numerous big cat sightings, particularly in the Sudbury, Suffolk area in 1996. I myself was sent to Devon on the other side of the country in 1989, to research the Beast of Exmoor, which was a big cat, and saw some interesting things on that trip. And there were numerous black dog sightings, ongoing, countywide, been going on since Saxon times and this sort of thing. The black dog being a symbol of danger or death or this sort of thing. Very often seen with red eyes. One thinks of Mothman. The Rendlesham Forest itself, UFOs, orbs, ghosts, time slips, poltergeist activity, black dogs, etc., ongoing. Stories again, back to Saxon times. Ben, I'm dying here, so say something.
Would you like something to drink?
I have to. Just continue talking about Rendlesham.
Well, Rendlesham was a very odd place, and if anybody in the local area around, like northern Rhode Island and southern New England, something like that, has ever been to Freetown State Forest, it's very similar to there. Very similar to the Bridgewater Triangle. It's a very odd place that is, it's very ambiguous, as I like to describe it as. But that's enough about Rendlesham. We'll talk to you more about our experiences at some other point in time because we have to start wrapping up for the show.
Yeah, it did have a similar feeling.
So my dad and I will be featured speakers at the All Hallows Eve Psychic Fair at the Crown Plaza Hotel in Warwick, Rhode Island on Sunday, October 28th. And watch for more info on those events at www.behindtheparanormal.com.
And you can get my books, certainly from Amazon.com, Barnes & Noble Nook, e-reader, and Kindle Fire, and all the other great stuff that you can get from Amazon. Certainly my books, Faces at the Window, Footsteps in the Attic, Turning Home, God, Ghost, and Human Destiny. They're all there.
All right, so don't forget our website, www.behindtheparanormal.com. So we have a bunch of free podcasts on there, nearly 400 shows. And that includes, well, everything, essentially. So many thanks to our producer, Brandon Jackson, and we will see you right here, October 7th, when we will welcome back someone we haven't heard from in a long time, author, monster hunter, and UFO expert, Frank Ficino, to talk about his new book on the Braxton County Monster.
That's actually a mistake in the script. It's a revised copy of the book, and we just got it, and I'm really excited to read it. It looks terrific. It's
Indeed.
Expanded.
So in the meantime, tune into our Boston Providence Drive Time show on WOON 1240 AM and ONWorldwide.com at 6 p.m. Eastern Time every Monday. So who are we having on tomorrow?
Oh, tomorrow we have Rebecca Hawkins, who is a nurse, a hospice nurse, and has witnessed many, many passings of people, as But not I witnessed some too while working as a graduate student and a seminarian in hospitals, but not as many as she has. A lot of interesting stories about near-death experiences, things of that kind.
Oh, well, it sounds very fascinating. So, I will leave you to your quote.
Okay. Well, we leave you this evening with a thought from the early 20th century French poet Guillaume Apollinaire. Now and then it's good to pause at our pursuit of happiness and just be happy.
Thanks for joining us on our great cosmic journey, and we will see you next time.